Thank you very much. So that's the easy part of the presentation. The tougher part is always to try to speak afterwards. But I want to thank Andrew for having me here and for all of you being here tonight. But I wanted to ask a question. What happens when a person meets a musical instrument? And an ideal answer could be the piece by Bach that I just played for you. But a more accurate and probably more authentic answer is that it depends on many different things. The notion that we can make or produce a sound, yet alone make music from an instrument such as this, require a complex amount of circumstances, and it's very difficult to be able to find ways to bridge that gap between what we call sonic chaos and what is organized sound known as music. And take it from me, because I teach 41 kids at one time in a public elementary school, all armed with musical instruments themselves. So putting an instrument in a child's hand does not necessarily make them into a musician, but is one of many conditions that can create and drive the potential for them to have a creative expression. When I was 10 years old in grade 5, a musical instrument was placed into my hands, but it wasn't this one. It was actually the recorder. And my teacher at that time thought that it would be the least expensive instrument and also the most accessible, which was ironic considering that it left me completely out of the picture. And in this sense, disability was not only social identity placed upon my character, but also the effect of my environment upon my ceiling of potential development. So it did force my parents to look at other options, and I'm glad that they did, because even to this day, I don't really like the recorder. It's not anything to say against those professional recorders that we all love and know. So my parents and we looked at different options. I think we chose the violin because it was simply the most beautiful sounding instrument that we knew. And in that sense, change didn't necessarily happen in my case because of inherent understanding or knowledge of the world as it was and is today, but from an ignorance of what was considered impossible by experts. So to put it in context, of my parents had played violin themselves, and they knew that you needed 5 fingers, you needed to use your thumb in a certain way, you needed to use your pinky, all these small muscles that I didn't have. We probably would have chosen an instrument like the trumpet or even singing, and I have a horrible voice, so thank goodness they didn't. So my parents decided to buy a half-size violin, and we went to a pediatric rehabilitation center known as Holland Bloorview. Could you hit a slide, please? It was here. Oh, another slide. That was me when I was very young. Next slide. It was here that my parents and I had the violin, and I was in tow, and they essentially went to a prosthetist and said, here's our son. He has this musical instrument, so deal with it. And through a few months of probably a little bit of parental pressure, I didn't really know about it, this spatula was created. And it's essentially just a couple pieces of Velcro and an aluminum tube that comes around here. And I think I hit the jackpot in many ways because it was the perfect adaptation right out of the gate. I enjoyed classical music. I didn't even know it, but I became a bit of a classical music geek very early on. And I was able to, from when I was 10 years old, not being able to participate in music to 2009 when I was finishing my graduate degree in music at Yale. And I had opportunities to play at the White House for the presidents, the Pope, as recently as the Dalai Lama a couple days ago. And how are any of these things possible? There are, as I was saying, many things, but there were great teachers, there were great friends in my life that supported me, but it was this little tiny piece of innovation that leaves me standing here before you today. I went back to Holland Bloorview after graduating, and I decided to do some work in the music therapy department, working with children who had more serious or challenging conditions than I did, like cerebral palsy or spinal muscular atrophy, Down syndrome. And they were using musical instruments as tools for psychosocial rehabilitation, emotional, and also physical as well. One instrument stood out to me in particular, and I'll just let a video play. If you can hit the next slide, please.
Thank you for choosing VMI, Virtual Music Instrument. Virtual Music Instrument uses cutting-edge motion detection technology to translate movements into music. The system generates musical sounds from movements interacting with colorful shapes on the screen. When you start the software, it will activate the connected webcam. The webcam captures yourself and your movements related to the shapes you draw on the screen. VMI will interpret the motion and transfer the output to speakers.
That's it. You come to the purple and the blue. And you come down to the blue. Hear the stars. Move it around. That's it. And again. And move again.
So the question, which was tremendously exciting for me as a performer, was what if we could actually take an instrument like the virtual music instrument and have someone who had even more of a physical challenge than I did to participate in a classical music ensemble. I decided to create an interdisciplinary team funded through the Holland Bloorview Foundation and the Yale School of Music, aimed at seeing what happens when you shift an assisted device in terms of context and setting outside of therapy and put it into a performative and artistic setting. Could we hit another slide, please? This is where I met Eric Wan, who also has a very interesting story. He was a violinist, up-and-coming violinist when he was very young, and at some point in his life, in his late teens, he became paralyzed and wasn't able to perform again. He was working as an intern at Holland Bloorview at that point, and I asked him, well, what if we find a way that we can actually have you performing something not only with a chamber ensemble, but what about a full-scale orchestra? Would you like to be a soloist with the Montreal Chamber Orchestra in November? And this was last year, and we actually did that. So I just wanted to show you another video of the result of a lot of programming and a lot of rehearsing with Pachelbel's canon. Next slide, please. Thank you. Let's try the first two variations.
Which one would you like to keep, the quarter notes?
Let's keep the quarter notes.
Okay, so that was...
Is that okay, Eric? I think we're covering you right now. We can't hear any of the counterpoints, so come in too. Why don't we start from there first? When I see someone like Eric producing music and we can react off of that into something completely new in a new territory, well, it makes it fresh again.
For me as an artist, it was fascinating to see how technology was married into the aesthetic and music-making experience.
Yep, we're all playing.
The ability to create music with just the wave of a hand with small gestures or moving your head, it was something very powerful.
I've learned playing with the violin for about 8 years before I got paralyzed. Ever since I got paralyzed, I really didn't think that I was able to play an instrument again. I've never done it in the settings like this before, not mentioning being on the stage. It's an incredible feeling. It's not something that I thought I would be able to do before the VMI was invented. It's pretty good.
Great job, Eric. I think that came together pretty quickly. Yeah. So I have to wrap this up very soon. My idea and what I've been doing at the Harvard School of Education is now that we have a proof of concept, and we did eventually do this concert in Montreal with a full orchestra, what can we do for young children? Can we introduce instruments like the virtual music instrument to kindergartners, design pedagogy, design curriculum so that they're able to not only perform music, but learn through music as well? And in closing, I'd like to say that the violin itself is a 16th century piece of technology. It was created to extend the range of the human voice. And I think that we've heard a lot of talks over the course of the last few days where, at its best, technology serves to extend the range of human capability. And I'm hoping that through this medium, Stories like Eric's and myself are not exceptions to the rules where all the stars and circumstances have to align in order to create music, but rather that we create new worlds in which children all have the right to explore the world more meaningfully and explore their imaginations through this phenomenon we call music. Thank you very much.
How many of you would like to hear Adrian play us into lunch?